Look at my COVID hair. Anyone else been in like coronavirus hair? Oh my God. Anyway, coronavirus has kind of started to dissipate, apparently, according to everyone else. And now everyone's gone back to work. I can totally tell the roads are like loads busier when I'm walking the dog, etc. Everyone's gone back to work. Now we need to kind of think about how we go back to work. And we're going to address some of the things we should be thinking about in this video.
The problem in safety isn't deviation, it's complexity.
Health and safety has gone mad.
Health and safety is trying to unpick having gone mad in the past.
There's no one solution and one problem. The problem is that we are looking for one solution.
Does the structure of the team allow them to flourish?
Feel safe enough to be uncomfortable.
The environment defines our behaviours.
People aren't the problem, they're the solution.
Rebranding safety, crushing the stereotype. Brought to you by Riskfluent. What's up everybody? Welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety does exactly what it says on the tin. We're here to change the perception of health and safety and challenge those health and safety gone mad practices. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss another episode. You'll notice I've changed the tyre. Now, I've done this for a reason. Not because I wanted to add some variety to our videos. No, I've done it because I was just editing and I wasn't really happy with the content of this little clip. So I did it again because I only accept the best for you guys. Only the best. So let's get into it. We're going to cover how to go back to work after coronavirus, in coronavirus, during and surrounded by coronavirus. We're going to talk about management kind of tips, so like how to manage the risk. This is not a video about, do social distancing, have one-way systems, install screens and stuff like that, because we pretty much know how to do that. And to be honest, there's no way I could tell you what to do and how to do it without really seeing your site. It's a real unique thing. So these are management level tips, really. So let's get into those tips. Okay. Planning and risk assessment. Probably one and the same thing, but essentially risk assessment, you're going to need to do one. Some kind of return to work risk assessment, or maybe you add coronavirus to your existing risk assessments. The way you choose to do that probably depends on how you've operated previously and how your risk assessments work, the size and the scale of your business, the size and the scale of the risk of coronavirus to your business. So for example, something like healthcare, probably gonna have a dedicated coronavirus risk assessment because the risk is much higher. They've got vulnerable customers, they've got a high level of contact with people, so there's a higher risk of spread, so it's much more complicated. They would probably have a dedicated coronavirus risk assessment. Maybe someone like an office, just going back to the office, could just have coronavirus added to their existing kind of office general risk assessment. So the reason I'm saying this is because I don't want businesses to have reams and reams and reams of paperwork. I'd rather us just have one risk assessment and one plan that provides value. But we talk a lot about risk assessments on the 3 videos we've done for risk assessments, so go check them out on our channel. Okay, so from the context of like a huge national, maybe international business, I think there's probably 3 levels to the planning and risk assessment. I think there's corporate, local, and dynamic. Okay, that's just how I do it. That's just my way of thinking around it. And let me explain that. So corporate level risk assessment and planning. This is going to be quite generic and it's going to be quite goal-based rules. It's going to be quite loose rules. So for example, a really good example of that would be the Health and Safety at Work Act. Manage risk as far as reasonable and practicable. There's a lot of leeway in that. Do you get what I mean? So we're telling you, you must manage the risk. But what we're saying is, do it what's reasonable and practicable for you. Corporate level is going to be quite generic, yeah? So this is kind of like a business risk assessment. So this is going to say things like how you as a business are managing coronavirus. So if you've got coronavirus, return to work as your kind of risk and hazard, right? And then your control measure is going to be all local teams must have a local plan and risk assessment for the return to work of coronavirus. Or all local teams must have included and considered the risk of coronavirus and the risk of returning to work in their plans and risk assessment. So now we go down to the local level. this is where we're starting to get a little bit more focused. We're really in the local teams now. So remember, I'm talking from a big national business. So you might not be this big, so you might just start at this local level, right? So you've got this local level. Say if you're like a national manufacturing business with loads and loads of factories, this might be the factory level. Right? So the factory level now, they understand their business, so they're going to get some local kind of machine operators, machine line managers, supervisors, whatever you want to call them, their health and safety team, their reps, whoever, you know, on a Zoom call. I nearly said in a room then, you know, on a Zoom call or in a room, depending on how you're managing this risk. And you're going to sit down and you're going to talk about the risk. You know, how does coronavirus change the way we go back to work? You know, we need to manage our touch points. Can we manage social distancing? Can we do that here? What about here? Right, we can't do it here, so we're going to do social distancing here, but here we can't do it, so we're going to have to go heavy on face protection and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a risk assessment. Finally, dynamic risk assessments. Now, this is a phrase that gets bounced around a lot, and I do think it kind of loses its value, but this is just how I see it. Now, it's different in different industries. You know, real high risk industries look at dynamic risk assessments probably quite a bit different. But me, for kind of thinking about it for the general populace of people, I think a dynamic risk assessment is really what a risk assessment should be. It's that thought process, it's a concept, it's a social conversation. So if you imagine it now that we've got, say, the 20% effectiveness of our kind of management of the risk is hit on the generic corporate risk assessment, right? And then you've got another 20% is hit by that local level risk assessment. We've still got 60% of the risk not being managed. 60, 70, 80. You've still got 60% of that risk not being managed, right? So basically how we manage that, boy, is we teach people to understand the kind of dynamic nature of risk and the process and thought concept around managing risk, being mindful of the hazard, mindful of the risk. It's being able to kind of extend their capabilities and adjust and kind of bend around the rules and stuff like that to get the job done but still manage their risk. Now, this requires quite a lot of pre-work within the business. You need to be able to have a real good level of communication, which we'll come on to in a second, a good level of competency within the business. You know, you have to have a lot of trust and stuff like that, and you might not have that. You might not have quite a good culture. It depends. I don't know what your business is like, but I really, really do think that we need to emphasize that it's really important that the local level of teams feel comfortable to say, I feel like we're not managing this risk, have the conversations and work out a way together to be able to deliver the product or service, whilst managing the risk of coronavirus and all other risks as well. Does that kind of make sense? I hope. I don't know why I'm asking you. You're not gonna be able to tell me, are you? Okay, communication. Communication is vitally important. I think there's 3 levels of communication when we're thinking about this. I think there's pre, during, and post. Pre is, to me, one of the most important. This is things like getting your phone out and making a video whilst you're walking around the office and you're recording all the changes you've made, right? So let's say you've installed screens between each desk, or you've moved the desk between like 2 meters between each desk, right? Or you've installed like a one-way system. I just get your phone out and just walk around being like, yep, this is the one-way system we've installed. We've installed this here because of blah, blah, blah. And you can see over here on all of our desks, we've installed a screen, and we're doing this to kind of make sure that there's no potential fluid transfer between each desk, but they're perspex screens, so that we've done that so that we can still not feel like we're being segregated and we're not lonely, so we can still kind of see each other. Yeah, things like that, like kind of explaining the change, the thought process around the change, and how much consideration you put into your staff. It does a few things. One, it stops the shock when you walk up and you go, oh my God, it's so different. It stops that. Yeah, it stops the anxiety as well. Like people going, oh my God, what's the risk when we get there? You know, what have they done to control the risk? How different is it going to be? How am I going to get my work done? It stops the stress and the anxiety before they've even got to work. They're thinking about this stuff. You know, especially people that have got young children or older parents or their care providers or something like that. They might be really, really worried. So I think that's a really, really good way to kind of calm those anxieties and those pre-stresses before we even get to work. The next thing I would do is arrange some kind of Zoom calls, some Q&A Zoom calls for people to just ask you questions. You know, I want you as management and leaders to be vulnerable, really, for a little bit, and just open the floor and just say, just ask me whatever you want. Yeah, and hopefully they'll come back to you with questions, you'll be able to answer them on the spot. And if you can't answer them on the spot, that's okay, and just say, yeah, okay, we don't know that, but that's a really good point, James, and I'm going to come back to you on that one on next week's Q&A call. We're going to address that for you. Yeah, I think that's really good, giving people a feedback loop essentially. Next one, during. Now, this is unbelievably important. This is, we're back to work, right? You need a clear conduit of communication from the decision making at the top and the middle, down to the shop floor, down to the sharp end where we're actually doing stuff. And that needs to not that needs to be not lost in translation. That needs to be clear and concise all the way to the shop floor, all the way to the sharp end, okay? What you also need is a feedback loop. You need that to come back up to the board, to the middle management, all the way up, and that also needs to be not lost in translation, and that is extremely important. One final kind of bit about during, and to be honest, pre-coronavirus, and to be honest, probably going forward, it's really important that you create a safe environment psychologically for people to communicate. Now, the biggest thing here is not stigmatizing the reporting of potential symptoms of coronavirus. I cannot stress this enough. The amount of people I've seen on Facebooks and you know, any kind of forums or something like that. You know, I've got someone come in who's you know, just got a cough and they said I need 2 weeks off now. You know, I don't think they've got a cough. They just want 2 weeks off. You know, for me, that's not a problem with the person. That's a problem with you and the business and how you're kind of looking at this person and probably a wider culture, right? But you're running a risk here, whether that person is taking the mick or not. You're running the risk of stigmatizing this. And you're running the risk of people coming into work with the virus anyway, and then 2 weeks later, it's covered your whole business and everyone's at home. Now you've not got a business. So just let people go off and create yourself some kind of capacity to be able to absorb people going off. But do not stigmatize it, and have a conduit of communication for people to go to somebody, report potential symptoms, and isolate immediately. It's so important. Okay, your post comms. Now, this is just really simple. This is just another way to say, I want you to check what you're doing and I want you to learn from coronavirus. But I want you to think now you're back at work or when you're going back to work, is how you can learn from this, particularly for communications during an emergency situation. Critically think about how you communicated through this process and how you communicated prior to it, and then how you've communicated when you go back, and get some feedback as well from your shop floor. Right? I want you to really look at that to help you work out how to communicate better in the future, because I honestly believe communication is one of the most important things that we can be better at. Okay, this kind of goes hand in hand with the first point around risk assessing and planning, but having tailored approaches. Averages do not work. Having a policy, a strict policy or a strict plan or a strict risk assessment on a corporate level or management level covering loads and loads of different sites will never work, because even just from county to county, people operate differently. They're different cultures, people think differently. Even from north to south of England is different, let alone when we go, you know, England to France and Spain to America. You know, depending on the size of your business, all of these places are going to be different. You need to be able to create a system where people have the local flexibility to be able to do what they need to do, but still manage the risk. So having tailored approach, allowing a local tailored approach is so important. Averages do not work, in my opinion. Okay, another thing to think about, just because you don't have enough to think about, is all the other risks. People have been working from home for a very long time. People have not been driving for work for a very long time. Water systems have been stagnant for a very long time. All of these things increase our risk a little bit, yeah? People have not been driving for ages, we throw them back on the road and we say, go off and do 5,000 miles or whatever we're asking people to do. Because people are not used to this. They've been working from home the whole time. Now all of a sudden they're on the road and they're having to think about so much. Their brains are having to, again, remind themselves, you know, traffic light systems. And you're thinking, no one forgets how to drive. No, no one doesn't forget. Everyone remembers, you know, it's like riding a bike. But my point is that our brains, our cognitive capacity, if you will, hasn't been challenged that much. Now we're throwing people back onto the road. So it might be worth for you people driving is setting up kind of a Zoom call and just having a kind of conversation with loads of people about our concerns going back to the road and if we could do anything around that. Alleviating the kind of pressures. So let's say we might say previously it might be like, let's say a safety consultant, for example, we might say we wanted you to go to see 6 customers a day, every day before coronavirus. Now we're going to cut that down to 4, yeah, just to allow yourself to ease back in, yeah. Legionnaires, things like that. Water systems have been stagnant for a long time. The HC have just put out a guidance on Legionnaires and returning back to work, so go check that out. I'll link it in the description below. But just think about it, you know, these systems have been sitting stagnant for a while. Water's been stagnant, probably nice and warm, especially in this weather. It's beautiful breeding ground for Legionnaires. It's practically a brothel for Legionnaires. People's awareness to the actual building and people's awareness to your procedures, like evacuation, for example. You might need to do a drill quite early on. You might need to refresh people's memories, especially if you're in a complicated workplace like, you know, nuclear or manufacturing or something like that, where there's loads of different types of alarms. You might need to familiarize people with that. So just going through all those emergency situations, whether it's like a quality emergency with a machine kind of gone awry, or whether it's a fire emergency or whatever, going through those processes and refreshing people's mind, I think it's a great thing. Okay, one last thing, well, 2 last things. 1, plan, do, check, act, PDCA, right? You've done your planning, you've done it, you've gone back to work now, so you've done your plan, you've done your do, right? You don't forget to check it and act on it. Don't forget to review, don't forget to have those feedback loops and have open and honest conversations and is this working, how are we doing? Don't just do your assessments and be like, whew, nailed it, put your feet up, sitting there, you're like, nailed that, didn't we? Coronavirus, what? Yes, ding, 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 KO. Anyway, yeah, don't sit pretty. You need to constantly review this stuff, yeah? Don't make it a formalized process. Make it an open and honest conversation. Make it a social exercise. It's gonna be much more beneficial, okay? Grand. Next, give your people some time to adjust, people. Yeah, people have been sitting at home, working from home, maybe they've been furloughed, whatever their situation, they've been extremely stressed through this whole time. I know myself, pregnant wife, mum working in a hospital, you know, not seeing friends and family, not being able to just go to the shop and get anything, not being able to get any Doom Bar for the last 3 weeks because for some reason there's like a mass drive on Doom Bar. It's because it's an unbelievably nice beer. Hashtag we are not sponsored by Doom Bar. That would be awesome if we were though. It's stressful, you know, this whole period has been stressful. So just allow people time to adjust, allow people to come back to work, be understanding, yeah, be open, be honest, be supportive. You don't throw people in and be like, right, we need to go back up to full capacity, we need to be running these machines and people like mad like we were before, we've got the mad Christmas rush coming and we need to make money fast. You're just going to do the opposite. You're just going to run people into the ground, they're going to get ill and they're going to leave, they're going to get stressed and they're going to leave, they're going to get whatever, and it's just going to be counterproductive to you. So allow people time to adjust. Okay guys, I hope you've enjoyed that video. That was kind of the business approach on how to return back to work after coronavirus. Let me know what you're doing, how you're managing this risk. You've got any kind of innovative ideas, let's help each other in the comments below. Otherwise you can hit me up on social media, which is coming onto your screens here or here right now. Yeah. And we can have a chat about that. That would be great. If you haven't listened to the podcast, go check out the podcast. We did like 4 or 5 weeks on coronavirus paneling and stuff like that. So that was quite interesting. You go listen to some business owners and people, experts in like cleanliness and mental health and risk management. And have a look at how they kind of manage this stuff early on in the period. That might help you. Another thing to think about is IOSH have put out a free e-learning kind of program online I wouldn't say it was life-changing, if I'm honest. It's not amazing. I didn't go on it and go, wow, I didn't think of that. There was a couple of bits in there that was like, yeah, fair point. But most of it kind of already knew. So if you're a safety professional, it's probably a bit of a waste of time. But if you're a small, medium-sized business and running this stuff yourself, it's probably a good idea to go check that out. Otherwise, check out the HSC's website. I'm a massive advocate of their guidance that they put out there. And like I said, they've done that Legionnaire's return to work COVID risk thing guidance as well, and there's loads of other guidance on there as well. Feel free to check out our other videos, especially the risk assessment concept one. I really think that will help you when you're thinking about that dynamic level of risk assessment and understanding and approaching risk assessments from a concept place instead of a kind of formalized process based. Okay guys, thanks for watching, catch you later, safe.